Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed working with your global imports in your anonymous closures. In this section, we'll be talking about how to augment your modules. So yeah, modules often need to have additions to their existing properties. If you've ever worked in some large code base of documents, you're going to know the value of splitting functionality between many files. So here in our armory.js file is all that code that we built in the last two sections, where the armory module is. Over here, we'll have globalkingdom.js, where all of the behavior globally for the kingdom is kept, and there you can see our global variable wartime with the truth value, signaling we are at war. Now, providing extra properties for existing modules can be done through a process called augmentation. In a separate file, we'll keep a function which will add values or functionality to our existing armory. Here we have the warchest.js file. That's going to be our augmenter file. It's going to add functionality to the armory in the event of war. Now, augmentation is almost done like a recreation of the existing namespace. You can see here that we're going to be using the same sort of immediately invoked function expression that's going to return something to the armory existing global namespace. That's why there's no var keyword on that armory variable. Inside of our function now, we're going to pass the old namespace, right? And since it is our old namespace and existing as a global, we're going to go ahead and need to use our import knowledge, and we'll import that old namespace as a local in order to make some modifications to a temporary object that it creates. Of course, in order to augment our module and return a new module with all the old stuff in it, we're going to need to pass in the old module, and there it is, armory. Notice the result of this immediately invoked function expression that uses the old module will be eventually an object that gets returned and stored back in the old armory namespace. So what's the stuff that we want to close up and add in here? Well, we got some local variables here called oil barrels, of which there are 1,000. We've also got some catapults to add to our war chest, stone slinger, rock rain, and the giant's arm. We've also got a new method called assign catapult. That's going to take in some regiment number, and it's going to hook a regiment up with a sweet catapult and of course some oil barrels to toss at some orcs. Notice here that our public functionality, namely the assign catapult method, is being added as a property on the old namespace object, which is local to this function. So once we've added all of our new private values and all of our new public functionality on the existing object, then we'll return the modified module, because now old NS has an extra public property as well as these new closures, oil barrels, and catapults. Now, augmentation is super cool. It's great, right? It adds functionality whenever you need it. And it's especially great for public functionality, but we want you to be aware of one thing, and that's that previous private data from your old file and your old function that you used to build your original namespace, all of that private closure data will not be accessible to any of your new properties in your new file. The augmented properties will have access to their new private state, and all those public methods over here will also have access to the private data right here. But none of these public or private values will have access to the closed data from the previous file. Taking a look, remember that closures are always produced by the function itself and never the returned object. So, if we build a new function expression in our war chest file, right, it's not going to recreate all those closure references back to the old function that was made in the previous file. Very important to note. That means that any new properties not going to have any access to all that old private data that we made. They will still be there. The earlier public properties that we had produced in the previous function, all those references to the closures will still be there for that. But any new properties will not have access to the old closed data, only to its new closed data. So the best practice here with regard to augmentation is to group your file content around your needed data. Any cross-file private state build that you could manage won't even have the level of privacy of just a single closure, and often it leads to hard to manage code figuring out how the modules are augmenting each other or referencing each other. So the best practice is just to keep your file grouped around data that's related to each other and that need each other. You can see here, though, in our cool warchest.js file, that assign catapult doesn't need any access to the old private data, so we don't have any broken references, and our file is grouped very well for augmentation. So now we will send you over to work on your augmentation skills in the challenges, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of JavaScript best practices. Thanks so much for hanging with us here at Code School, and we'll see you real soon. Belch. Sorry, I had to belch. Of course, code. What's code? Code. I'm going to review your code now.